conversations is when this publisher started to say, okay, we can do some things to support teachers in the field, no matter what age, to know what to expect for child development and know how to respond. So that's my background with teaching strategies, and for the Area Education Agency, for the last 10 years, I've been teaching this. So not only the goal assessment, but also, okay, so I've watched these kids, I've written these things down, yay for me, now what? I'm like, what am I going to do with it now? So that's what I thought I would have some conversations with you guys tonight, because as you're starting to understand this development, once they hit 3, 4, and 5, there's some different responses we have in classroom settings, particularly in full daycare settings, particularly when you're offering 12 hours of care a day to young children. That's going to feel a little bit different than the infant toddlers. So what I'd like you to do is get into your goal books here, and it's my understanding, so correct me if I'm wrong, that one of your primary focus have been on the social emotional area. So let's just go into your books, and I'm going to be quiet for a minute and have you talk to me about each individual one. 2 things you know for sure about young children and this tool. 2 things you know for sure that connect young children to this tool. So when you're looking at this, tell me just what you know about it. Go ahead, Rachel.
How kids can manage their feelings.
Okay, so how does this book help you with that? Where does it show you that?
The codes, the bars, it shows you where they should be, and you can see where they are at. So if they are in the right area or if they need to work on it.
Good, good. And so what particularly about managing their feelings, what's helpful? Because there's quite a few different objectives in social emotional. So if you want to think about managing emotions, like I think I've got a kid that is just upset all the time or is very explosive, which objectives would you be kind of looking to for guidance? And you can flip through. What would you be looking for?
Either responds with emotional cues or manages, the one back here,
Manages feelings was your very first one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good. Good.
Even solves social problems.
Yeah, one thing we know, right, is that even though this book takes kids and pulls them apart into 52 different little bits and pieces, it's all related. I mean, so if I have trouble with language, I have trouble with expressive language, you're going to see me have trouble in social emotional. Why? Because I don't have the words to help explain to you what the problem is, what I need, what somebody else did or didn't do. So we know that even though this book takes them and pulls them all apart, it's our job to figure out what pieces are going to be the most supportive to us for that specific child or group of children or activity that I'm planning, and what are some of those other relationship issues. So even though we're talking about social emotional, I want you to remember that language is one of the big ideas. And if I have trouble with language, either in my expressive language, people don't understand what I say, English is a second language, all that stuff is going to potentially get in the way of me being able to regulate my own emotions and behaviors, right? Because when we even look at what are the examples of a child being able to demonstrate that, many of them are verbal. Let me shut this door here. I know it's going to get really hot, right? So what else do you guys know about this book? You know the ages, and you know that this goes all the way through kindergarten, right? And you know that the beginning of the colored block is the beginning of that school year. Did you know that? So when these color blocks go across, so for 4s, this is the widely held expectation for the beginning of the 4-year-old room year, and this is the expectation for the end of the 4-year-old room year. Okay? And then you also know that especially in social emotional, what do you see? Lots of overlap. because it all is dependent upon my experiences. If the first time I walk into a group care setting is on my 4.5 birthday, I'm not going to have as many of these things in place as somebody who has been in group care since they were 2, or vice versa. If I've been in group care since I was 18 months, and it's hard to negotiate a big group of, think about you. Do you constantly want to be surrounded by 19 others that some of them you don't even aren't your friends, So it can affect us, the amount of time we spend with others and the amount of experience we have. So that's why you see, and they call these widely held expectations, and that's why you see them overlap, and that's why you see within a 4-year-old year, a child, it's okay for them to be here, here, or here. But when they develop this, their guidance to you guys are, most children at the end of that kind of year, heading into kindergarten, most 4-year-olds should be hanging out right here at this 8 on this particular one. So if you've got a kid that's hanging out over here in these examples, that's something that we need to figure out how to give them either more supports or more experiences. Okay, what else do you know about it? Are you guys using these pages at all? These strategy pages?
It looks good to get activities.
So just take a look at the strategy pages if you haven't been using them, because that's one of the things I'm going to talk to you tonight about is some of the strategies for social emotional. And what I want you to notice is there's a strategy page for each objective, and they go from the youngest children up through the kindergartners. So there's kind of a developmental sequence in the strategies page. So when you get over here, these are the strategies that generally are targeted at your 4 and 5-year-olds. And when you're over here, it's for your infant, toddlers, and 2s if they need that support. So exactly what Rachel said. If you think, I got a kid and he's just really struggling, he's just really not demonstrating confidence in meeting his own needs. It's not just that he's clingy when mom arrives. He's having trouble with every transition. He's having trouble when there's a new person in the room. He's having trouble if we change the toys. He's having trouble because the seasons changed, now the routines change. So for that kiddo, this is what I would say is your first go-to resource. Go look at that, try to figure out what's the big idea there for him, and then use this as your instructional activity plan initially. So Rachel, give me an example of maybe how you've used that strategies page.
Like if you're trying to get one specific objective and you're having a hard time, it'll give you clues and ways to get the objective done.
Yeah, very good. So what else do you know about this book? What else is working for you with this book as your guide?
Well, obviously if the child is not in his bracket, that it gives you some guidelines on maybe what we can do as activities to help progress into the next step.
Yeah, and vice versa. If you've got a kid that's just accelerating at something, it gives you ideas all the way through kindergarten age. So if you've got just a chatty Cathy, social butterfly, able to identify her good friend group, sticks with her good friend groups, has major empathy for everybody. Y'all have this kid, I hope. She's playing the nurse, she's playing the doctor, she's the teacher, she's doing all these things. And it's easy to kind of look at her and say, this is a good peer model for everybody else, but for her own development, you can start to head up. You can start to head up to that next expectation and figure out what are some things we can do with that as well. Social emotional is a little bit different with that, but when you get into some of the approaches to learning and cognitive, it makes a lot more sense. How it can help you move up and move back. Yeah, exactly. Anything that is overwhelming or a barrier with just this book right now. Let's say that there was a terrible flood in the center and this is the only thing that was saved. It was in the back of your car. You were reading it at night in the bathtub, and this is the only thing that you came out of.
It's fairly repetitious because you keep doing it over and over again, and kind of they overlap each other in the social, emotional, or whatever category you're in. They kind of blend in together. Different ones are kind of similar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So do you think that's a positive, or is that kind of a bit of a barrier?
I think it's a positive for me.
Yeah, because you can watch a kid and get one scenario and see how it applies to all of these different kind of discrete skills.
Well, you
Okay.
can get one observation and you can go 5 different spots.
Right.
That's the nice thing.
Yeah, and when you're writing, I'm not here to talk about writing notes tonight because I know that you guys have been practicing and practicing and practicing. But when you're writing, sometimes if you write 3 more sentences, you get 10 more areas, truly.
Yeah.
So if you write string red, yellow, blue, okay, I can get that they have fine motor and that they did red, yellow, blue, I can get that. But if I wrote string red, yellow, blue, while singing Mary Had Little Lamb and laughing and giggling with her friend and said, these are my favorite colors. Okay, that, just adding those 3 sentences, now I've got social emotional, I've got friendship, I've got preferences, I've got patterning, I have all that stuff. So sometimes it makes sense to just write a little bit more and you can get a whole much more information. Well, I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit tonight about when things aren't going perfect with social emotional development. And I don't need names, but do you have any scenarios without, just like sending you to a therapist session about things that may not be? Do you ever look at these and see kids stalled out or kids below the rest of your group? Do you have any of those scenarios? Okay. So what I'd like you to do initially, Rachel, as you're shaking your head yes, and you're not on the camera, so it's all good, is the first thing to do with these kids is to try to figure out what is 1 or 2 of the big ideas. So let me give you a scenario. I walk in and a teacher says, they just don't play well with others. Okay? They just don't play with others. So in my mind, I'll kind of unpack that for you. I wonder, is it that they have trouble entering play with others? So are they having trouble joining a group of other 2 children? Are they having trouble once they get into the play communicating back and forth? Is verbal turn-taking an issue? Like they don't have those verbal skills? Are they having trouble with stay and play? Like, are they just the kid that's just bouncing around from center to center? And so it's trouble that they get in and they, I talk to you, I go back and forth, but now I'm like, I'm off again. So is it stay and play? Do they have a strong preference for just one material? And so you have a hard time getting them, if it's a lack of resources, and I say that sharing, in my view, is usually a lack of resources if we think about it. So the only time we ask people to share things is when there's a limited amount of something. Think about it. So people don't generally ask you to share your house or your car, but if they did, it was because somebody doesn't have what they need. So kind of going to sharing is a hot button issue. But my first response is, well, are there enough Legos for everybody? How much do we have to share our special things? So is it that? Is it that I have this strong preference, and about the time I build half of my amazing castle, somebody says, you want to share your Lego blocks with Jack, don't you? And you're like, no, not really, because I need all these blocks to build my special castle, and it doesn't sound so fun for me.